Oh yeah, we're gonna overclock this thing. So welcome back everyone, and when I initially did all of the performance numbers of the RTX 2080 Ti for the written review that we put together over on the website, link to that down in the description below if you want to see that. One of the things that I found was, despite this card being an absolute powerhouse at 4K gaming and most games completely obliterating the 60 FPS barrier, there were a few games where, with the settings turned up as high as we had them, where it didn't quite hit that 60 FPS comfortable mark. So what we want to do is see if overclocking it can get it to that point. Now, we did do all of the tests with the same drivers that we did the review for. Even though the newer drivers had come out, there wasn't a performance change between the drivers, so I went ahead and just kept the numbers that we had and just kind of built off that. But our test bench is a Z370 based test bench on an EVGA Z370 classified K motherboard with a Core i5 8600K clocked at 5 GHz. So cranked it up as best we could, and we could probably get a little bit more out of it, but wanted to keep it consistent for sake of testing. So this is the RTX 2080 Ti. Now, overclocking this card is a little bit different, but just a little bit, than the way things were in the past. See, we used EVGA's Precision X1 overclocking utility, and it actually has the new scanner, OC scanner, built into it for the new Turing cards. Now what this does is it goes through a really long process of going through each voltage stage and optimizing that voltage to a frequency. So the idea here is we're going to let it do the scan overclock, and then I'm going to do a manual overclock to see, well, which one is more beneficial and could you get just as good results with the scan overclock as you can the manual overclock. So as we look at this, we're going to see the stock frequency, which had a base clock of 1350 and a boost clock of 1635, moved over to, with the Precision X1, bumped it up to 1438 base with the 1723 boost. So an 88 megahertz overclock on the core, and a manual overclock where I pushed the voltage and the power limit and everything. We got up to 1485 with a 1770 boost. Now that is a 135 boost over the base clock. And the one thing to keep a note here is the Precision X1 will not overclock the memory. We actually manually overclock the memory by plus 500, so it's reading as 1875, which is an effective of 16 gigabits per second. So 2000 gigabits per second faster overall. But what does this look like on a chart where we get to see the actual core frequency? So this is a new chart that we're working with, just so let us know what you think about this. It shows over a 5-minute run of superposition at 4K rather than 1080p or 1440p, because 4K is going to put a much heavier load on the GPU. And you see the frequency of the Precision X OC and the manual OC are really tight. You know, that's a really good job that it did there as far as validating a good solid overclock on the core. Now again, it's not going to represent memory overclock, that's just the core. And you can see the boost over the reference frequency, so the stock frequency curve of the 2080 Ti Founders Edition. What does it equate to in terms of temperature? Well, you see a pretty linear curve there. So it's from 77C on stock, 80C on the Precision X overclock, and 82 on the manual overclock. And as far as power draw goes, we go from a stock of 343 watts total system from the wall up to 394, and that little bit of extra push really only took it up by 8 watts. So it took it up to 402 watts, and now that was through the superposition run at 4K, so it's going to be more heavily leaned on the GPU, and it's going to push the CPU a little bit, but gives you an idea. But what about the games? That's what we really came here to do. Was this overclock? Does it translate into frames on my screen? Does it take these games from sub or right at the 4K 60 mark and push it up to a much more playable region? Well, let's take things and kick it off with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So Shadow of the Tomb Raider in our review saw an average clock of 56 FPS. Well, an average rate of 50 FPS, not clock. So average frame rate of 56. And the OC bumped it right up at that 60 barrier, and the manual OC bumped it to 62. Now, we didn't see quite as measurable of a jump on the 1% and 0.1% lows, but the 1% did see a bump, 0.1 not so much. Moving into Monster Hunter World. Now this is a game that was pretty heavy on the CPU, so I honestly didn't expect to see these kind of results translate into the game. So we went from 59 FPS average to 61 with Precision X overclock, and then 64 with the manual overclock. Moving things over to Deus Ex Mankind Divided at DX12 high settings at 4K. I know we could go further than high settings, but if you've ever benchmarked this game or played this game, anything past high is ridiculous what it takes to run it. So high settings was 62 FPS on average, so this game was just over the 60 FPS mark. And moving up to the Precision X OC, got it up to 67, and the manual only pushed it up 1 more FPS to 68. So at the end of the day, yes, an overclock on the 2080 Ti will yield you better 4K results, and this is going to be more indicative of what you're probably going to be seeing on the aftermarket variants. So the MSI, the colorful, the Asus Strix, several of these we're working on reviews now for the site, so hopefully those results will be up on the site very soon. So it's good to see the linear response. Now the question is that I have for you: do you think that the performance gain is worth the power draw and temperature increases, because it does get quite toasty? So guys, it's been Keith with WCCF Tech TV. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that we don't miss you in the next video.